friends, I'm Akash, and this is your News of the Week for the week of November 14th to November 20th, 2021. I'm Akash Dakoti, and let's get right into the headlines. We begin with President Biden officially signing the $1.9 trillion infrastructure bill into law after bipartisan agreement from all sides of Congress. Next, we have the Biden undergoing a routine colonoscopy yesterday, meaning that for the very first time ever, we have had a woman serving as the acting president of the United States. Vice President Kamala Harris briefly assumed presidential powers yesterday while Biden was under anesthesia during his routine colonoscopy. This has set a major record, and this is absolutely incredible. Now, next we have the FDA officially approving the booster doses for all adults over the age of 18, which means that originally it was just for those who had a higher risk of getting COVID-19, but now it's available to all adults, which means that after the CDC officially approves the distribution of the vaccines for all adults, you can go ahead and get the booster shot, which is going to be absolutely awesome. Now, our next story is relating to the Indian government, which has repealed the 3 contentious farmer laws that farmers have been protesting against for the better part of a year. So this is some massive news in India right now, and I'm going to be talking about it in just a moment. And finally, we have the General Electric Company, founded by Thomas Edison in 1892, has officially announced it is going to be splitting into 3 parts: General Electric and Company. Hooray! Just kidding. They are not going to be naming it General Electric and Company, obviously. But GE is going to be splitting into 3 different companies over the course of about 2 years. Now, this is a major thing, and I'm going to be talking about it very soon. But first, that is your news of the week. So let's get right into the actual stories. Let's go into further details. And we begin with President Biden's $1.9 trillion infrastructure bill has been signed into law by President Biden on November 15th, after bipartisan agreement from both chambers of Congress, the House of Representatives and the Senate. Now, this bill is going to be covering all forms of civilian transportation to supporting of rural services. Now, this means that it can go anywhere, starting from roads and highways, the bridges, the waterways, from all the way from there, and then we go to things like modernizing the electric grid, and then releasing internet for those in rural areas, refurbishing airports throughout the country, making interstates so much better. This seems to be, I'm pretty sure this is one of the largest public works improvement, one of the largest public works bills ever in the United States since Dwight D. Eisenhower introduced the plan for the interstate highways back in the 1950s. This is the largest infrastructure bill since that time, and it is coming right now. Now, it was originally coming in the House of Representatives many months ago, and after a lot of approval, it was sent to the Senate. And the Senate came along, they made several changes to it based on what they liked, and so after that, when the Senate approved it, it went right back to the House of Representatives, and after the House of Representatives approved it, where all but 6 Democrats voted for the bill, and this also included 13 Republicans who also joined in and voted for it, eliminating any chance that any other defecting Democrats who want to vote against it, it will probably not go through. And sure enough, that did happen. The 6 members of the squad, pretty much a group of the 6 most progressive and left-wing Democrats in the House of Representatives. So these 6 decided to vote against it because it was decoupled from another bill, the Build Back Better bill. And yes, that is a wonderful That was a wonderful alliteration, and I absolutely love the name. But regardless of the name, these 6 did not approve of it because it did not have that Build Back Better bill coupled with it, so they voted against it. However, the rest of the Democrats and 13 more Republicans also voted for it, eliminating any chance that they would actually be able to do something, which means that it passed on November 5th straight to the president, who signed it 10 days later on November 15th. So this is going to be the largest infrastructure bill since the days of Eisenhower signing in the interstate. And this is going to be taking place over the course of 8 to 10 years, spending over $1 trillion in infrastructure. And hopefully, this is going to turn out well. And I'm very excited to see what happens with the infrastructure bill. Now, let's take a look at our next story for you this week, which is President Biden underwent a colonoscopy, a routine colonoscopy yesterday, which means that Vice President Kamala Harris became the very first ever woman acting president of the United States, making history. Well, this is absolutely incredible, and interestingly enough, President George W. Bush underwent a routine colonoscopy during his time in office, actually twice, one in 2002 and one in 2007, and both of these times his vice president, Dick Cheney, was the one who was the acting president of the United States when that happened. Now, this is what was going on, and so that was really brief, and this is also quite brief, as this was literally just 1 day or so. But then again, that's how long the colonoscopy took place, and well, this was since President Biden underwent his routine colonoscopy as, of course, Walter Reed National Military Center in Bethesda, Maryland, near Washington, D.C. So, of course, as this is going on, Vice President Kamala Harris briefly assumed the presidential powers while Biden was under anesthesia during his colonoscopy, and therefore, Vice President Kamala Harris became the very first woman acting president, which is absolutely remarkable. Now, that's what's going on with President Biden's colonoscopy yesterday, so we'll take a look at our next story. The FDA officially approved the new booster doses. All 3 of the booster doses, that is indeed Pfizer, Moderna, and Johnson & Johnson, all 3 of these booster doses are now available to every adult over the age of 18. Now, but previously, it was on a case-by-case basis on the vaccine, and it was only available to those who actually had a high risk of getting COVID-19. But now, the booster dose is officially being opened to every single adult in America over the age of 18. You can get the vaccine. Now, of course, the CDC does have to, approve the distribution of this vaccine booster dose, but really that is not going to take that much time. And after that happens, that means that you can go ahead and get the booster dose. So this is a great time to get vaccinated if you haven't already. Make sure to do so, and this is some wonderful, wonderful news. So let's take a look at our next story, which is taking place in India, where Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi has officially repealed the 3 contentious farmer laws that farmers have been protesting against for the better part of a year. Now, this took place yesterday on November 19th, and the story starts all the way back in September of 2020, when the new bills were passed in. There were 3 major farmer bills which were made by Modi's BJP government in a bid to overhaul the current farmer system. Now, the market originally was government regulated, so you'd have a minimum price. From that point, you can sell upwards to anyone you choose. So this was the original plan for selling produce, from farmers. However, with the new bills, this meant that the government deregulated everything, so they weren't in control, and you can just leave it up to the farmers to decide what price they wanted, so you can sell it beyond the original government-assured grower minimum. So instead of the government-assured minimum, you could sell whatever you wanted, no matter what. But the problem is that that angry farmers realized that this could mean that there could be greater control by corporations over the farming industry and over the markets. So, angry at what had just gone on, well, they organized massive protests nationwide, and on Thanksgiving Day of 2020, November 26th, they all reached Delhi, where police stopped them from reaching the national capital territory of New Delhi. And since then, the farmers have been staging some of the largest protests in Indian history around the Delhi suburbs, despite the COVID-19 pandemic and also the police intervention, which has cost the lives of hundreds, and the freezing temperatures in the area overall. And at one point, the government even went so far as to suggest that these farmers were terrorists and anti-nationals. This backfired heavily, and eventually the Supreme Court of India itself suspended these 3 laws. And so, on November 19th, yesterday, 2021, nearing the 1-year anniversary of the original protests, which have kept going on until this day, Prime Minister Modi officially repealed the 3 contentious laws that caused these protests and apologized for what they've caused so far. So these farmers' protests came along, and sure, it has pretty much become a symbol that the people's voice always matters most. And, well, although the leaders of the opposition parties said it was a good thing that Prime Minister Modi repealed these laws, they also criticized him because, he was acting too late, they said, and that maybe the real reason was there were 5 northern state elections in India that were taking place, and, well, in order to win those, well, he had to repeal those laws. Well, that's what some people say, and that's what the leaders of the opposition said, and regardless of whatever the real reason it may be, what we know is that the people's voice always matters most. And this right here is major proof of that. And despite it coming quite a while late, it is still proof that the people's voice matters most. So, with that in mind, let's take a look at our final story of the week, which is the fact that the General Electric Company, the 129-year-old company, founded by none other than the famed Thomas Edison himself, has announced that it will be splitting into 3 separate companies: General Electric and Company. Hooray! Just kidding. They're not going to be splitting into General Electric and Company, obviously. But as Johnson & Johnson, the famed pharmaceutical company based in New Jersey, announced last week that they're going to be splitting into 2 parts, one for consumer brands and one for the prescription drugs and actual pharmaceutical business. It seems that GE is following that path and has announced that the world-renowned 129-year-old company is splitting into 3 parts. Hopefully, in a process that will take roughly 2 years or so. They're going to be splitting into 3 parts, and that is aviation. Yes, they actually do aviation, I checked. There's also healthcare, and there is energy. So these 3 bits are going to be splitting apart. Now, the plan is that in 2023, they're going to be separating off the healthcare segment. This healthcare segment is GE Healthcare, which specializes in making all sorts of equipment for hospitals. Then after the healthcare part splits off, you'll have, of course, the energy section, the oldest part of the company, obviously, and GE Energy is going to be splitting off in 2024, whereas healthcare is going to be splitting in 2023, and that means that we'll leave with GE Aviation coming along after that point. Leaving GE as the world's largest supplier, or one of the world's largest suppliers of aircraft engines, given this is what GE Aviation is actually quite famed for. The other 2 competitors for GE Aviation, by the way, are Rolls-Royce and Pratt & Whitney, and so all 3 of these companies work very hard for the aircraft engines and aviation suppliers. Now, of course, you have aviation, healthcare, and energy. These are the main three parts of the company. They're going to be splitting from the original GE, and so that is going to be what is happening with General Electric. And as someone who is absolutely fascinated by companies, this is really intriguing for me, and I cannot wait to see what happens with GE and also with Johnson & Johnson, who's also splitting into two parts very soon. So that is all of your news of the week for the week of November 14th to November 20th, 2021. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you soon in another News of the Week. Goodbye.